Hello, dear students. This is the Western Intellectual History course. The title of this lecture is Western Thought in the Middle Ages, and I am Dr. Maha Sallam, Associate Professor of English Literature. Today, we are going to talk briefly about one of the most famous philosophers of the Middle Ages. He is Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas was one of the great fathers of the Christian Church and one of the great Western medieval philosophers. His philosophy is known as Thomism, and in the 20th century, there has been a revival of this philosophy and it became known as Neo-Thomism. The major contribution of Aquinas was to express Christian thought in terms of Aristotelian philosophy. He studied the philosophy of Aristotle, and of course he was a priest and he was knowledgeable about Roman Catholic faith, so he made this combination between Aristotelian philosophy and the Christian thought. He was very influential to the extent that the Roman Catholic Church after Thomas Aquinas used the combination of Aquinas thought and Aristotelian philosophy, used this combination as the main vehicle to carry its religious teachings. All the religious teachings of the Roman Catholic Church in the time after Aquinas used the combination of Aquinas and Aristotle together in order to transmit its religious teachings. Now we need to mention two disciplines: theology, the science that studies religion, theology, and philosophy. They are two different disciplines, yet it is possible to combine them in one coherent unit. Although theology and philosophy are not the same, but some philosophers tried to combine the two together. Thomas Aquinas in Western philosophy tried to do this. Christianity and philosophy together, this is what Aquinas was doing. And in the case of Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd, they also tried to combine theology and philosophy, but of course the difference was that the religion in this case, in the case of Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd, was Islam, and they tried to make one coherent system that combines the two sciences together: theology, science of religion, and philosophy. In this slide, we will see the difference between these two sciences. Theology aims to organize the doctrines of religion in a systematic fashion. We all know that there are certain doctrines in any religion, the rules and the articles of faith of the religion. And if you are a theologian, a scientist of religion, somebody specialized in theology, then your job would be to organize all the doctrines of this religion in the form of a system, a coherent system. Religion itself is an expression of how we see the ultimate nature of reality. We live in the universe, and as we know, philosophers are trying always to investigate or examine the nature of the universe and what is reality and what is mere appearance. We talked before about the concepts of reality and appearance ever since the times of the Greek philosophers, the ancient masters. So religion also is an expression. It tries to express our view, what we see about the ultimate nature of reality. How do we visualize the reality of the universe we live in? Some of the elements of religion are rational elements. That is, when we say something is rational, this means we can understand it by our minds, our reason. Reason here is the mind. So, some of the elements of religion are rational. They can be comprehended or understood by reason or mind. The word reason here means mind. But some other elements of religion also, they do not depend on the mind to understand them. They do not depend for comprehension on the faculty of reason or the mind. They depend on other faculties that we have, such as our intuition or our emotion or even revelation, like when some prophet gets a revelation from heaven through the archangel Gabriel, for example. So there are certain other faculties in the case of religion. In addition to the mind, one can comprehend the elements of religion by the mind, or sometimes by intuition or emotions, or even by revelation. Now let's go to philosophy. Philosophy, on the other hand, assumes nothing except that all experience can be examined in a rational manner. This means that philosophy mainly depends on reason. It would not depend on emotions or revelation or intuition like religion. It depends on the fact that all experience, everything that we experience, can be examined in a rational manner. And of course, it tries to give a coherent, consistent, comprehensive account of our human experience and of the world we live in. We want, if you are a philosopher, then you want to talk about the human experience, how human beings exist in this world and how they deal with the other beings in the world. Other beings would include other humans or animals or plants or even rocks and non-living entities, and they would try to examine this human experience and also what else exists in the world and the nature of reality and all these things. And everything in the case of philosophy, it is done by the use of reason, not revelation or intuition, as we mentioned. Okay, since we are talking about Thomas Aquinas, and Thomas Aquinas lived during the Middle Ages, to be exact, he lived in the 13th century, and he was a father of the Roman Catholic Church, then we will need to mention something called medieval scholasticism. Of course, medieval means related to the Middle Ages, and scholasticism is like a school of learning. Let us see what do we mean by medieval scholasticism, which is sometimes called the philosophical method of the schoolmen. The schoolmen here, who are the schoolmen that we mention? The schoolmen, they were the teachers of philosophy and theology in the Middle Ages. If you are living in the Middle Ages, then you would consider somebody to be a schoolman if this person teaches theology or philosophy or both. So the schoolmen were the teachers of philosophy and theology during the Middle Ages. Of course, Aquinas himself was a schoolman. He was one of the most famous of the schoolmen. Aquinas and the other schoolmen developed a formal method of dealing with intellectual questions. If you are a philosopher, then you will have to try to answer certain intellectual questions about human experience and about the world we live in and the nature of ultimate reality, as we said. So these people, they invented a certain method of how to answer the intellectual questions. When they started writing their answers about intellectual questions, the writing all the time followed a certain rule or a certain formal procedure. They began by what we call the thesis statement. They stated the argument they wanted to discuss in their essay or in their book or so on. And after the thesis statement, the second step would be to try to give support or proof of the thesis statement by quotations from the scriptures. How would they prove that the thesis statement is correct? They would quote certain parts out of the scriptures, out of the Old Testament and the New Testament. Then the third step would be to provide further proof by quotations from the fathers, like they would say, Father so and so has said kada, or this other father said kada. The fourth step, they would offer the opposite of the thesis, and then they would refute it, which means they would reject it or prove that it is false. And then the final step is a conclusion. So the philosophical method of the schoolmen was a formal method following certain steps or procedures in writing in order to prove their argument, beginning with the thesis statement and then support or proof of the statement. This proof is taken out of the scriptures, the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, and then further proof by quotations from the fathers, like the research work that was done by this father or that father, the book that was written by Aquinas or another priest. They would take quotations from the fathers, and then they would argue the opposite of the thesis statement and prove that the opposite is false. Therefore, the thesis statement itself is correct since its opposite is false, and they would reach a conclusion at the very end. So we have come to the end of this lecture, and again a very quick capping. We talked about Thomas Aquinas, the medieval churchman, one of the most important fathers of the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages, and how Thomas Aquinas tried to make a combination of theology and of philosophy into one coherent system, and he was following the steps of Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd, who tried to do the same thing. Then we mentioned the scholastic method, or the medieval scholasticism, or the philosophical method of the schoolmen. Thanks a lot for being attentive, and see you next week, inshallah. Good luck.